Good morning, everybody. People today say that video games can cause violence and corrupt kids. What people don't know is that they're actually learning from video games. So today I'm going to talk about how video games can produce cognitive learning, some experimental schools going on with video games, and how video games can be the future of learning. There is no evidence that show that video games cause violence. This is said from Jason Aller from North Carolina State. He says that games can have positive impacts, particularly with psychological functions. He led a study with digital games with senior citizens and showed that they actually have higher levels of emotion balance. And then there's another study from New York saying that they can improve vision and also brain functions. In Israel, an Air Force, they did a study on their pilots. They had 10 pilots play a game called Space Fortress every day for about an hour. And then they had people, non-gamers, just study for their tests. And they actually showed that people that played the Space Fortress actually improved in their pilot skills other than from non-gamers. And in 2004, a study showed that surgeons who played video games also made fewer mistakes while doing surgery. Made fewer errors during surgery, and it helped them focus with their needles and being more cautious of what. Okay, and now with the experimental schools. In Santa Monica, there's this school called New Roads that's built to have a school that's built from video games from the ground up. It's called Game Desk. What it is, it's a totally new way of learning. They have digital, everything's digital in there. There's screens from learning, from doing speeches, and from plays. The video games can provide and support individual learning. This is said from one of the creators of the Game Desk. That one of the people that also did the study with the Game Desk is called from Scientific American Mind, that they called this the Holy Grail of education. That one of the students named Henry said that they were playing a game, and towards the end of the game, he didn't realize they were actually learning algebra. And then this really got him excited for the going to school, how most kids just go to school and go, I'm at school and don't want to do anything. Another big controversy with video games is shooting games. What people don't know is that they think that shooting games, people just want to go out and shoot people, or they create violence in kids. But what it really shows that it doesn't. From the Newtown shootings, Vice President Joe Biden did ask some of the universities to do a study with violent video games with users. What they found out is that they actually don't cause violence within students, that they actually improve vision and more awareness of what's going on. That doesn't mean go play Call of Duty for 4 hours and tell your parents that, I'm learning from this and improving my vision. So don't do that. So you wonder why video games can be the future of learning? That video games allow students to apply their own knowledge in complex contexts. For example, there's a video game called Portal 2, which is a sci-fi game which puts players in an environment where they have to solve puzzles. And those puzzles get harder and harder. What they found is that these puzzles are actually helping the brain try to figure out what to do. So it's actually producing cognitive learning. Video games can provide and support individual learning. Since everyone's different at learning and have their own way of learning, video games can help them learn the way they can learn. So from the scientific mind saying that video games are the holy grail of education, but the only thing is most people today mostly the bureaucratic part of the education system doesn't want to change the system. That they believe that the traditional way should be the way kids should learn. But most people today, seeing that new technologies are going around, that there needs to be a reform in education with technology. And that is my speech.
All right, Fernando, share your thoughts, please.
I liked your presentation. I like the topic. Firsthand, though, on the presentation itself, I would try to get to know your information a little more, and so you don't end up like, because I've done it too, where I lose track of what my statistics and my facts, that I kind of stumble around my cards, and I kind of like makes you even more nervous. So you kind of start spiraling down. Not that you did, but it affects the speech itself. You need probably a little more eye contact. I did feel you were talking to mostly this side of the room. As far as the information that you presented, I feel maybe you could elaborate a little more, specifically as how it affects. Like you said, it affects learning. I would probably elaborate a little more on how it does, like what part of the brain does it affect, what kind of learning skills are typically are mostly affected. I know you said there was like learning, and then some of your information is relevant because I know like for a fact like they use Portal a lot because I've read up on that, and they even offer it to universities for free. But overall, I mean, just those points, I would say, and your speech could be better.
Okay. Well, I thought that the opening was pretty solid. You set up a little bit of controversy. You do a good job at establishing that you're going to make this claim of fact the basis of your argument here. And there's a solid preview of what the structure is going to be. I think in the body of the speech, you did a good job signposting the first and the second point. Was relatively clear. It was harder for me to distinguish between the second and the third point. It seemed like all that information was running together. Speaking of the information, I think you did a good job finding information, but I get the impression sometimes that what you're doing is you are paraphrasing or summarizing information that somebody else has paraphrased and summarized instead of giving us direct quotes, and I think that that's a little bit problematic. There are a couple of places where you do have direct quotes, but they get introduced in sort of awkward ways, and it's one of those things where I think you've got the right kind of information to make the speech work pretty well, but you need to find a way to put that information together to make it sound like a speech instead of just like, oh, I've got this piece of information I have to plug in here someplace. It needs to be, you need to have more natural transitions between ideas and integration. Especially, the one I was thinking about especially was where the one kid was talking about, not even realizing he was learning in that process. I think if you go back and watch, you'll see that it feels sort of awkward the way that gets plugged into what you're talking about instead of being more naturalistic, a reflection of what's going on. So there's a little bit of structural stuff there, a little bit of language issue that I think you could fix. But I thought that there was very good research in the presentation. For example, when I said some of this seems like it's being summarized from somebody else's summary, you make a reference to Joe Biden calling for research on this, and the next thing I know, this event happened less than 6 months ago. I don't know when Joe Biden made his call for this kind of research, but all of a sudden we've got, now all these studies are finding no information that supports this. I'm going, okay, well, where did those come from? Who did that? Did they complete this study in the last couple of months? Or are we referring to something earlier that now, people have brought this forth because Biden asked for information on this? It just feels like it's, like I said, random information that's being put together as opposed to the way you're presenting it. So that's a little bit of a problem. On the presentation, I think for the most part you did a solid job. You got lost a couple of times in the notes, and I think Fernando's got a good suggestion for you there. You know, try and know it a little bit better so that you're not quite as dependent. If you know what your argument is, and you know what the basic structure of your argument is, then the only time you have to go to the notes is to remind yourself of the quotes or the statistics and that sort of thing. And the rest of the time you can talk to us. You do a pretty good job talking to us for the most part, like I said. I didn't notice that you were talking to one side of the room more than the other, but of course there might be a reason for that, you know, since it's a little bit thinner on one side of the room than it is on the other. All right. Not that all of you folks over